Hey everyone, so the new patch is a day late today. It probably is live as you're watching this video, and it's not exactly what we thought it was going to be from the PB video. I've kind of stopped doing these as it launches because it's very similar to the preview, but this is very different. So we'll go role by role, which I'll timestamp in the description, by the way. If you want to skip, that's absolutely fine. Go to your role, but I'll tell you the changes you need to know and then go more into the impact it will have for the general game. The biggest thing really is there is no Wukong update here at all, so they must be being tested some more and then launch the patch afterwards probably. Before our biggest role today, which is jungle, there is a lot of jungle stuff here. I always love reading the bug fixes at the bottom of the notes, so I thought I'd work in a little like riot oops section into the video. So Draven's ultimate, Wanting Death, it now probably decreases in damage based on how many units are hit, because apparently right now it's doing full damage even though it's supposed to reduce. Titanic Hydra was actually working on towers, so they fixed that as well. Getting damaged by an area user while having Death Stance equipped no longer causes area to continuously deal damage to that player. Shaco's clone with his ultimate no longer deals 60% of his damage instead of 75% on champions, and my favorite is Lissandra's passive. So the zombie from that passive could actually take the Eye of the Herald buff if your team steals the Rift Herald, but that can't happen anymore. Even though some of those kind of funny, the Draven one we actually have to look at because that is a proper nerf and the only 80 carry change of the patch. Apparently his ultimate was doing 100% full damage, and no matter how many targets it hit, it is supposed to do 8% less per target hit. So if you hit a whole minion wave before you hit a champion, it only deals 50% damage, and that is a massive change. You're going to be losing a ton if you do that. If you hit somebody directly, it's fine, right? But if you go through a lot of people first, it's a lot less. If Draven is weak at this patch, that is going to be why. Let's start with our junglers today, and a lot of carry junglers should be getting a buff this patch because a lot of their counters and tanks are getting nerfed. I expect to see a lot more Xin Zhao, Vi, Kayn, and even some Rengar as well, honestly, after these changes come through. I'm sure a lot of you will be happy as well that most big tank junglers are getting nerfed in this patch. Nunu will definitely stick out as the best one for now after this, and we'll also have the old kind of Zac coming back. So first up is Karthus. His ultimate damage is down 50 and the ratio decreased by 10%. He is actually one of the best junglers at the moment. We see Smurfs like ruin and abuse him the most at the moment because he power farms, he takes basically no damage and then does a lot of damage that you can't really dodge. This should really mess him up though. 50 damage off at level 6 is quite a lot, I think, and then the 10% is going to hit a lot more later as well, so he will be weaker earlier and also late into the game. Actually with this one as well, he isn't that good at lower ranks right now anyway. He's played more than twice as much higher up actually, so you might not notice this as much depending on where you play. Zac is getting a lot of stuff though, right? So his Q slow decreased, cooldown decreased late game, W max health damage now scales with the AP, and your ultimate reverted back to before the rework. I would definitely keep your eyes on him after these changes, and I expect these to be really good buffs. If you want to build some AP, you would definitely do way more than before. And remember, this just flat out adds a lot of damage to Zac now. His ultimate used to be crowd control with the blob and bringing people back, right? Now it is 140 to 280 plus 40% of your AP each bounce. That is 50% less on the same target, but that still is like 350 damage at level 6. 350 more damage than he does right now. They aren't lowering any other damage anywhere else. The only thing you're really losing with this is the pullback, but you gain the disruption and the damage when you're diving in. So you can basically do way more yourself and not have to rely on your team as much. I honestly think this is so good. Like, you're not really losing much. You're gaining damage out of it. And his disruption is so great because he is really tanky anyway, but he's going to last a lot longer in a fight now. Even though you'll build tanky, so it'll be hard to kill you that way, like you're going to have your Q crowd control, you have your E knockup as well, and now your ultimate knockback during an entire team. So if you jump into everybody, like, it's actually going to take you a while to die. With all the other tank buffs and with this change coming back as well and the extra damage, I think he actually might come back after this. His ganks are really good, like out of range from really far away, and he's now going to have the damage to back that up. With the Mumu though, his passive bonus true damage decreases back to 10%. Now this is reverting the buff in 9.8. At the moment, Tank and Mumu can do a ton of damage with Abyssal Mask, and mostly because of his passive. They realized that was kind of like their fault really for putting that in the game, so the only buffs left from 9.8 are to his Q. The cooldown is going to be lower than before, and that following them if they dash a move path, that is staying, but the passive damage is coming back. He is still going to be pretty strong, but if you do build a tank, then you won't be able to go as nuts as before on your own, and it will be a little bit less team-wide damage. Rammus is another tank getting nerfed, so his passive basic attack damage flattened, half max level by the way, and his ultimate damage decreased by 10 to 30 each wave. Both of these are actually a little bit bigger than it seems, so if we start with the passive, that is doubled when you have your defensive bull curl on, so that is twice as bad now at max level. Also, your ultimate does damage for 8 seconds, so the damage is 80 lower rank 1 and 240 damage lower rank 3. So the good part is that the reflection damage is still going to be there, so if he taunts you, then you still take loads of damage. Basically, like, here's his actual damage output going going down and not the damage you kind of deal to yourself. Remember though as well, big part was that his ultimate is double damage to towers, so you can take plates really easy with it. So it's 160 less damage to plates early and 480 less late game. That's quite a big difference. So Master Yi's bonus attack speed level 1 has been removed and the Q isolated target damage decreased as well. I've seen a lot of people say these changes are weird, but like Yi has been a terror at lower ranks recently. Like I'm sure a lot of you guys will know that. 8% attack speed is a lot to lose for early farming. The shard thing is like 10% in your runes, right? So you probably know how much that is going to help, and then this was 8%. It is all targeted at your early jungling though, so like buffs are going to die a bit slower with the Q change and everything is going to die slower with the attack speed. Once you get items, it won't really matter as much, but early game he'll be even worse. There are also 2 buffs though, but they're a bit smaller. So Wook's Q healing increased the late up to 90% of the damage dealt. Rank 5, this actually heals for a ton. It's 120% of all of your AD, and then it's 8% of their maximum health as well. You're going to heal for 90% of all of that damage now. It will make you a lot harder to kill, especially if you get cooldown reduction and you bring it down to like a 4-second cooldown. Wook is really good early, but he kind of falls off later, so this should really help with that. He's also amazing at countering more carry picks like Lee Sin because of his dueling, which this makes even better. Our other buff is to Gragas, so base health, health growth, and attack damage increase. Gragas is actually supposed to be really strong early and like has a lot of pressure, which this is going to add to. More health, more AD means a better early clear, so you shouldn't get as low in the jungle, should be able to gank a bit more, but it's only very minor. Moving into our supports, we're going to jump into Janna to start with because she is getting one of the biggest changes and it looks really bad, but in-game it actually feels pretty good in teamfights. So your W cooldown is now going to go down with ranks, and also the base damage has been decreased late game. Your E cooldown now decreases when Janna crowd controls enemies, so like your QW or your ultimate. The cooldown has been decreased early but increased late game, and the shield has been increased. So your W is going to be down 40, right? But they also took off a few seconds on the cooldown when you max it down. It'll go down to like 4 or 5 seconds eventually with some cooldown reduction, and it still hits pretty hard. So I don't even know if that's really a nerf. Obviously, the main part about it, though, is the shielding, because that is going to change how you play her. So with your Q, your W, ultimate, right? They all knock some of the cooldown off the shield. It actually means you can have 100% uptime on shields now if you hit 2 of those things. So if you Q W, by the time the shield runs out on somebody, you can cast it again already. It's actually pretty good. It will definitely add some more skill into a team fight. And I tested this on the PB as well to see what it's like. And it's actually pretty good in my opinion, even though it doesn't look that great. So Galio is actually getting nerfed in this patch. His W base damage decreased, damage ratio increased though, and his E damage decreased at early ranks. It's a nerf to support, but it's a buff to mid lane basically, even though nobody plays Galio mid lane right now at all. I haven't seen him in ages. Even though it seems kind of weird, he is actually pretty popular in other regions, especially like Korea and pro play sometimes as well. So that is going to be why he's getting nerfed. Every time his flash is up, it's kind of like a free kill. He's really good at diving and roaming as well. He brings quite a lot of damage and crowd control altogether. He isn't really that easy to use in solo queue unless you're like hyper aggressive, but I think you might as well just pick Nautilus to be honest instead of Galio anyway. This definitely just keeps like Nort, Thresh, and Pyke as the best kill lanes we have at the moment for sure though. Those 3 are definitely going to be a cut above the rest. Finally, then we have some stuff for Yuumi. So a Q range indicator brightness has been adjusted. W now gives assist when she first attaches, and E movement speed DK flattened. Apparently, these should be kind of buffs to her actually and make her a little bit stronger than she already is on live servers. I'm pretty sure Yuumi is really good once you've learned her, but people have to learn to play with her as well, and that's kind of like double the issue, right? They're learning the champion and learning to play with it. I do think Yuumi is better in some lanes than others, so like Ezreal and Sivir, those 2 are really good for sure, and other lanes just cannot be as great. If they can kind of like do damage themselves from range as well and keep themselves safe, it's so good. She feeds off how strong they are basically and gets much better in team fights. We're going to go into our mid lane now, and Akali is the first up, getting a nerf. Passive energy refund decreased late, and damage ratio decreased by 20% AP and 30% AD. This is targeting her empowered auto attack, by the way, and lowering her sustained damage over a fight, but not touching her burst potential. So especially as you scale into the game, and remember Gunblade has both AD and AP on it, so it's a double nerf for the damage, both ratios, even at just 1 item. So Riot thinks apparently most people can kill people with her ultimate, but good Akali's will then kill everybody afterwards with her passive and her Q, and that is the part they want to lower. They want to make her more of a proper assassin, so big impact with her really big cooldowns, and they're not going to be as useful. And this should make mages especially a worse matchup for Akali, who force her to use her ultimate as a gap closer and not for damage. Our other mid lane change is a bit smaller, so basically Echo is getting kind of like a quality of life thing. Basic attacking after your E no longer delayed due to the animation. If you play him, it should feel like a decent buff. I think it should make his trading easier and smoother, doing your combos, and I think Echo is pretty decent right now anyway, so this is definitely good. Finally, then we're going to go into our top lane changes. So Jace Q base damage decreased late game and damage ratio also decreased. There is only one change to top lane today, and I think it's mostly aimed at pro play rather than solo queue, to be honest. At lower ranks, Jace isn't really played that much, but basically if you can get out of lane phase, he's even worse than he is now, and he's already a bit of a minion, or can be. You still have that chance to demolish early and kind of snowball out of control, which is why you would pick Jace in the first place, but the more items and levels you get, the more you will feel these nerfs. So that wraps up the patch that hit today. Thank you for watching until the very end if you're still here, and hopefully you have a pretty good idea of what you should expect in your games today. I'm kind of curious who you think needs a nerf that isn't actually here. Like for me, it'd probably be Nautilus, but maybe next time, maybe next patch, we can kind of hope, I guess. And until we get those, for now, I will leave you with the robots.